Hi everyone, and today in this video we'll be learning about using mutable object type as a default argument to a function. Okay, that does sound mouthful, but let's just break it down eventually and we'll look into it in more detail. So to start with, we'll have a short recap on what default function arguments are. So for this use case, let's say we have a greet function, and this greet function only takes of one argument, required argument, which is name. And whenever we call this function, it will just say hello in the English, right? So if I define the function and run it, you could say it'll just hello Alice. But let's say what if we want to say hello in like multiple languages, right? Let's say like in Spanish, French, German, Italian, maybe. Uh, One very naive way to do this would be, define a separate function for like greeting in different languages, like what we have done here. And when I compile, like sort of run the cell and then try to do the same thing using like a different function call, I could indeed get like, the intended output where if I just call the greet function, I would get hello Alice. If I called the Spanish one, I would get hola Alice, and respectively for French, German, and Italian, right? But this is not an elegant way to do this. And I think this is where we could leverage the, like the feature of default arguments. So rather than having a different function for like, for every different language, we could just have a single function named greet and we will pass a prefix which is language dependent. So for here, the prefix would be hello, which is like English, and for default, the greeting would be in English. And when we want to greet in Spanish, we'll pass prefix to be hola, and for French, bonjour, and so on and so forth, right? And when I ran this, we indeed get the intended result, but this time we just had to define like one function, and the default, behavior, which is like English, is embedded with the greet function itself. So that was the recap for the default parameters and the default arguments, but we'll see what the mutable default argument means. So for this demo, we'll work with the subcase of let's say grocery shop. So we have a grocery shop where we are working of subcase where like a customer would come and they would want to add their items to the bag and then want to go to the checkout, right? So we have this function which is get empty bag, add item to the bag and checkout. So what this does is that like when the customer would come, they'll first get an empty bag and then add item to it. And the checkout function is just like lets us know which item are in the bag. So you could see one thing to notice here is that the bag argument of this add item function, it's a list and it's a mutable argument, right? So, okay, let's just run this cell. And now let's say Alice comes for shopping. First of all, step one, she'll need to create bag, right? So this she'll get an empty bag by calling this function. And now we have Alice's bag. And now she wants to shop for milk and banana. So eventually she'll call add item function with milk and banana while passing her bag as a parameter. And when we run this, we get the intended result where, like at the checkout, Alice exactly has milk and banana in her bag. And similarly, if Bob comes after her, he does the same thing, and he also gets his intended result where, like oat milk and blueberries are inside his bag, where that is what he ordered, right? But this two-step process actually can be condensed into a single step, right? And we can actually do that using default arguments. So how we would do is that so let's say we could say that for the first time when user is coming, if the user is calling an empty item function without actually passing a bag, we could just create one for him or for her, right? So for that case, we could use default argument to say that a bag is initialized to like an empty list when it is not passed. And then by doing this, we are sort of eliminating the need for get empty bag function. And when, let's say now when the new customer comes, let's say for this case, Alice comes for shopping, she only needs to do this one step, right? Where she would just like add item to the bag without actually giving the bag, and the function would itself create a new bag inside of it. And when we run that, we indeed get the correct result where like she has milk and banana in it. And when the Bob comes, he also like has to do the same thing where like he'll just do add item, oat milk, and then without passing the bag, and the bag will get created. And next time he'll pass the bag, and the new item will be added to his bag, right? And when I do this, it's like, oh, oops. You could see already had like milk and banana inside of his bag, and he just added oat milk and blueberries. Wait, what? Why is it happening? And even worse, if let's say if Jerry comes after the Bob and Alice and he tries to shop for the same thing, even if he just wanted to have soap and Tide Pods, he have like all the stuff which Alice and Bob had in their bag. But this is not what it's supposed to happen, right? Because we are saying that the bag should be initialized to an empty list when it is not passed, and we are like in each of the case we are not even passing it as in the first function call. So what's happening exactly, and why is it happening? So the thing is that whenever the function is created, at that time only the default arguments are evaluated, right? So that means that the function is created only once, and but the function can be executed multiple times. So if you are defining a default argument, that default argument will get evaluated only the time when the function is getting created. So, okay, I understand this might be a little bit confusing. So, let's just try to, like experiment with the code a bit. So, initially we had this add item function where we would just like giving it an empty list. So, we'll just put the empty list initialization inside of this function. So, logically speaking, it's doing the same thing, but now while doing so, it is sort of letting us know when it is creating an empty bag, right? So, now just let's just define the function. And it's like, oh, wait. The empty bag is created at the time when actually I just created the function, and this is not what I intend, right? Because I would want to create empty bag when then and only when the customer comes, not like when I'm defining the function. And okay, let's just like go ahead with this. So I have defined this add item function now, and when Alice comes, when she calls the function without actually passing an uh like the back parameter, the add item should create a new empty bag, but it is not creating it because we could see there is no empty bag created message here. So apparently it just creates the bag once and then it is adding the item, like the added item to the same bag every time the function is getting called. Is that the case? And indeed it is. You could see, like when the Alice called the add item function, the milk and banana got added to the empty bag, which was created when the function was defined. After that, Bob came, and when he did that, it exactly got added to the same list, right? And that list already had milk and banana in it. So this is not what we want, and I know it's like a little bit counterintuitive to what you would expect of default parameters or arguments, but this is what a standard behavior is. So how could you fix it? So it's actually easy to fix to be honest, but you need to understand or know how this mutable default argument works. Otherwise, you will be just scratching your head for no reason while debugging because logically it does seem like a sane choice to do. So the solution is really simple. So rather than giving mutable, parameters to the default arguments, we could just like give a immutable, we could just use immutable object type as a default argument, and dynamically when the function is getting called, we can initialize it like this. So here, to start with, I'm just like putting the bag as none and not an empty list, and then inside a function, checking if the bag is none, then like create an empty bag. So when I run this. Now, when Alice comes, you could see it's actually what we intend it to be. So the bag is getting created when and only when Alice is like, trying to add item in it, and then Alice's bag contains milk and banana. But let's just see it for Bob. And oh, yeah, actually, it is working like what we want. So it's an empty bag is created for the first time, and then now it only has oat milk and blueberries. And even if Jerry comes after this and he just wants soap and tea pods, like that is what he gets. There are no oat milk, blueberries, milk, and banana like already added inside of his bag. So what is the takeaway from this? So for general use case, I would say don't use mutable default arguments unless for some reason you really want to have such behavior. So rather than like having a default argument of a mutable type, like something like a list or maybe dictionary or a set or any object which is like a mutable type in Python, you could just initialize it with some sort of immutable type, like maybe a string or maybe just maybe most of the cases none just works like this. And where inside a function body, you just do this. Like if it is if the value is defined as a value is equal to the default immutable parameter value, sorry, object type value, you would just like reinitialize it to the um, empty list or maybe a dictionary or something like that. And that is how you'll like sort of save a lot of headache from that will come from the debugging, right? So yeah, this was an interesting behavior that Python has. This could actually be useful in a lot of different scenarios, but you are supposed like you must be familiar with the behavior. So that's it. Thank you very much.